Hola! Hola, amigo! Hola, mi amigo! Hola, amigo! Hola, mi amigo! Por favor, uno momento. Ah. Hola, vecino. ¿Te gustaría venir conmigo a la iglesia el domingo? Mi iglesia es muy dorito.
Dorito?
Dervitido y se puede transformar tu vida de pecado. Pecado. not pecado, but pecanos es muy delicioso. See? 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 See?
See,
See?
I don't even know.
See?
I don't even know what you're saying.
You speak English.
Yes.
You're not a Spaniard.
Well, I'm a quarter Hispanic, but I don't speak the language.
Seriously?
Yeah,
Seriously?
I never learned the language.
Seriously?
What were you saying?
Never mind.
Well, good morning. Oh, that's lovely. Thank you for choosing to be here. It's a beautiful day outside, and you've decided to spend the beginning of your morning here, and we appreciate that, whether you're here in the building or joining us online. Just by way of announcement, the only thing going on right now is I want to bring your attention to is our Raise the Roof Fund. So if you look around, we need a new roof. And that's hopefully happening this fall. So we have a lot of collecting to do. It's going to be about $35,000. We're about a quarter of the way there. So that's good. So I know if John were here, he would say, please pray about it and then do whatever God tells you to do. The only other thing I want to mention is hopefully you grabbed one of these as you came in, our worship folder, and inside of it is what we call our connection card. Just a way for you to communicate questions, suggestions, prayer requests, and then Don's here today to preach to us, and he'll walk us through some next steps at the end.
So I have to tell you a story. If you don't know, I have homeschooled my children since they were in kindergarten. And Tyler, my oldest, is really wanting to play sports, and that's just not available to a 10th grade student that's not enrolled in a school somewhere. So we're looking at schools. To a mom who has homeschooled her children the whole time, this is a very nerve-wracking process. So he is shadowing at the North Tonawanda High School on Tuesday. And I called and I set up the appointment, and they said, okay, we have a student for you. His name is Leo, and he can shadow, and we set up all of the details. I said, okay. Like, I don't know, I'm a little scared. He's fine, but I'm scared, right? So I went over and I talked to my mom, and she said, so how's it going? And I told her about this and about Leo, and she goes, Leo, in 9th grade, plays football? He is the grandson of mom and dad's really close friends. So she gave me her number, and I called the grandma, and grandma says, Leo is so nice. It'll be great. And we have been praying for you. We have been praying, and this is such a God thing. We are so excited about this. Yesterday, Leo came over to our house. Like, God is at work in all of the details of all of the things. Like, I didn't even know about Leo. Like, I couldn't make it work. I'm the mom. I'm the one who tries to make everything work. You plan all the details. You do all the things. You try to make everything work together. But God was at work even when I couldn't and I didn't know about it. And he is just that good. So this morning, we're going to stand and we're going to sing Open Up the Heavens because we want to see God at work. He is at work, and sometimes we just can't see it, and we want to see him this morning. We want to see what he's doing in our lives and in those around us. Even if it doesn't feel like it, we still want to see him. So we're going to ask him this morning to open up the heavens and let us get a glimpse of what he is doing. So if you would, stand please and join us as we sing.
Waited for this day, we're gathered in your name, calling out to you. Your glory like the fire, awakening desire will burn our hearts with truth. You're the reason we're here, you're the reason we're singing. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your heart, filling every part of our parade. Your presence in this place, your glory on our face, we're looking to the sky. Descending like a cloud, you're standing with us now, Lord, unveil our eyes. You're the reason we're here, you're the reason we're singing. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your heart, filling every part of our parade. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your heart, filling every part of our parade. Show us your glory. Show us your power. Show us your glory, Lord. Show us your glory. Show us your power. Show us your glory, Lord. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your heart, filling every part of our parade. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your heart, filling every part of our parade. Show us your glory. Show us your power. Show us your glory, Lord. Where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow. All your ways are good. All your ways are sure. I will trust in you alone. Higher than my sight, high above my life. I will trust in you alone. Where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow. follow you. Whom you love, I love. How you serve, I serve. This life I live, I will follow you. Yeah, I will follow you. Yeah, light into the world, light into my life. I will live for you alone. You're the one I see, knowing I will find all I need in you alone. In you alone. Where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you. Whom you love, I'll love. How you serve, I'll serve. This life I live, I will follow you. Yeah, I will follow you. Yeah. In you there's life everlasting. In you there's freedom for my soul. In you there's joy, unending joy. And I will follow. Where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you. Whom you love, I love. How you serve, I'll serve. In this life I live, I will follow. Where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you. Whom you love, I love. How you serve, I'll serve. In this life I live, I will follow you. Yeah, I will follow you. Yeah, I will follow you. Yeah, I will follow you. Yeah.
So this morning, as we head into a time where we pray and we bring everything to God, a lot of times Pastor John will ask us, what's that one thing? And so this morning I'm asking to think, what's that one thing? What's that one thing that's holding on to you? That one thing that's troubling you, that you can't seem to figure a way out of? Hold on to that a moment. Because even if you can't see it, God is at work. So I encourage you this morning, even take your hands, put them in your lap, and hold them closed like you're holding on to that thing. And as we pray, as you feel so led and moved, open them and let it go. All right? You close your eyes, let's pray. Lord God, you are so good. You have blessed us beyond anything that we ever deserve. Lord, it is so good when you remind us of how faithful you are. Lord, that story that I told about Leo and how you were just at work in the details, in the things that were troubling me. You care so much and you love so much. And I am so grateful because the more that I can see what you're doing, the more that I can be at peace and trust you. And Lord, I ask that for all of us here this morning. Lord, that you would help us. Help us to see you. Help us to see where you're at work. Help us to get a glimpse of what you're doing in all of the circumstances that don't make sense. In all of the things that are really hard. In all of the things that we can't figure out. Lord, I ask that you would help us. Help us to lay down the desire to fix it all and to trust where you're leading. Lord, I ask that you would help us to resonate with this song that we just sang, that we will follow. Wherever you tell us to go or stay or act or speak or not speak, Lord, we just ask that you would help us to follow. Give us the ability to do that because we need you. We need you with everything that we have and everything that we are because if it's just me, I make a mess of stuff. So Lord, this morning, as we turn our attention to Pastor Don, who's bringing the message this morning, Lord, we ask that you would help us. Help me to hear what you're saying. Help me to see where you're leading. And help me to be willing to follow. Lord, we need you so very much. In Jesus' name, amen.
I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe through every battle, through every heartbreak, through every circumstance. I believe that you are my fortress, you are my portion, you are my hiding place. I believe through every battle, through every heartbreak, through every circumstance. I believe that you are my fortress, you are my portion, you are my hiding place. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe through every blessing, through every promise, through every breath I take. I believe that you are provider, you are protector, you are the one I love. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are. It's a new horizon, and I'm set on you. And you meet me here today with mercies that are new. All my fears and doubts, they cannot come true, because they can't stay long when I'm here with you. It's a new horizon, and I'm set on you, and you meet me here today with mercies that are new. All my fears and doubts, they cannot come true, because they can't stay long when I'm here with you. It's a new horizon, and I'm set on you, and you meet me here today with mercies that are new. Oh, all my fears and doubts, they cannot come true, because they can't stay long when I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are.
As Pastor Don makes his way up here, it's your turn. It's always fun coming in Sunday morning early when Don's preaching, because there's always something. There's some sort of prop. And you're wondering, what's he up to this time?
Don't know what reason, but okay. Yes, I was getting ready at home to build something for today's message, and I happened to look behind the partitions down in the basement, and I found this coat rack on wheels. I said, "Man, that will work perfect for what I want to do." So I came in the other day, carried it upstairs, attached my stuff to it, and here we go. Now, some of you are already thinking ahead. You know what you're going to fill this in with, right? WW blank D. Well, I want to make a suggestion to you. I want you to fill it in with a J. What would Jesus do? But I suspect that all of us, at least occasionally, have times when we fill it in with someone else. And I wrote down on my cue cards here a few suggestions. For example, what would mom do? Mother's Day is coming up next week. If we're fortunate enough, like me, to have a mom that you could look up to and help guide you along the right paths in life. Or you might say, what would my dad do? My friend? What would my Sunday school teacher do? How can you go wrong with following what your Sunday school teacher would do? Sunday school teachers have never made mistakes, right? There's never a scandal where a Sunday school teacher or a pastor What would my pastor do? You never hear about pastors going astray. My grandma. Now, if you have a grandma like my wife, man. But I want to tell you something. I've lived with her. It'll be 45 years in August. She does make mistakes occasionally. I mean, she married me. So her judgment is questionable, okay? My grandma or my grandpa, well, then I thought, I need to find something, a good example, maybe to appeal to the younger folks. And so please excuse me if I mess this up. I pay zero attention to pop culture, okay? So maybe you might fill this blank in with, what would Taylor Swift do? I need to write a song about my last bad breakup. Right? Or what would Kid Rock do? And if you want to get a little political, pick your favorite. What would Joe Biden do? What would Donald Trump do? And I'm going to go with one of my favorite people in the world. I like him so much. I have my DVR. Yeah, that's right. Set to record. What would Jesse Waters do? Here's the last one. And this is where so many people and even Christians make a mistake. What does my heart tell me? One thing I do read, especially in the Sunday newspaper, I get the Niagara Gazette every Sunday. Well, I actually go get it on Saturday, but I read it. There's an advice column in there called Ask Annie. And oftentimes I assume it's a woman, you never know who's behind the curtain, but follow your heart. Which is basically saying, do what you want to do, right? Do what you're planning on doing anyway. I had, when I was pastor in Lockport, I had a man come to me. He said he wanted to talk to me. I actually owed this guy for getting me back on a motorcycle after I had a very bad accident right out here to Five Corners, right out here, just up the road a little bit. And he came to me, and he said he wanted to leave his wife, and he wanted my advice. What do you think I advised him? Don't. Right? Well, he was giving me all kinds of reasons why, she hadn't cheated on him, et cetera, et cetera. 2 hours we sat there and talked. And finally I said to him, you've already made up your mind what you're going to do. You just want my blessing, right? And he said, well, yeah, you're my pastor. And I said, you really think that I, as your pastor, am going to advise you to leave your wife and your little girl? Did you really think that I would say that? He said, well, I thought you'd just tell me to follow my heart. No. The Bible tells us the heart is deceitful above anything else. So following your heart can be one of the worst things you can do. So, I would like to, if you don't already plan to do this, I would like to convince you or reaffirm for you. Let me go around here so I don't have my back to the camera. To fill the blank with, what would Jesus do? What would Jesus? Now, you knew that was coming, right? You were expecting that, right? You didn't think I'd advise you any other way, right? All right, for me to do this, I have to set this mic down for a minute. What would Jesus do? Now, move a little bit. I want to make sure I don't start getting waved at from the balcony. Am I good here? Yeah, okay. All right. So back in the 1990s, there were a lot of Christians wearing bracelets like this. I actually found this downstairs here. I guess they did it in Sunday school a few weeks ago. I passed them out to the kids. And I like it. It says WWJD, what would Jesus do? I like the rainbow colors. Every time I see a rainbow, no matter where I am, the first thing I think of is God promised what? He would not flood the earth again. Right. Well, back in the 90s, these became very popular. What would Jesus do? And I don't know if you know this or not, but the whole idea behind WWJD, what would Jesus do, is based on a book by Charles Sheldon that was written in 1897 called In His Steps. Anybody familiar with this book? All right. Yes? Good. Have you actually read it, or you just heard it? You actually read it. Okay. In the book, now this is fictional, okay, Reverend Maxwell is a minister, and he's, you know what, I can't see everybody, so is it all right if we do this now? That's off camera, I know, but at least I can see everybody. Okay. In the book, Reverend Maxwell, who's a pastor, he's in his office, in his church, preparing a sermon based on 1 Peter 2:21. To this you were called because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. That's what the sermon was working on. The doorbell rang at the church. And Reverend Maxwell goes to the door, and standing there is a bum. And the man tells him he's looking for a job. And Reverend Maxwell says, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Well, the next day, Reverend Maxwell preaches a sermon on 1 Peter 1:21. And at the end of the service, that same bum comes walking down to the front of the church. He looked like a bum. He smelled like a bum. And you can imagine everybody's wondering, what's going to happen. Well, he turns around and he faces the congregation and he starts speaking. Now, I have to read this word for word because it's a quote from the book. I'm not drunk and I'm not crazy. But I lost my job 10 months ago. I'm a printer by trade, and I've not been able to find work. My wife died 4 months ago, and I have a little girl that I can't take care of. I don't expect you to find a job for me, but I do wonder what you mean when you say, I'll go with Jesus all the way. What does it mean when you sing songs like, Jesus, my cross I have taken? Are you folks actually denying yourself to win the lost? Are you making sacrifices to help people in distress? And then, to the shock of everybody, the man collapsed right there in front of the church. Now remember, this is a fictional book, and it's written back around 1900, okay? The pastor and his wife take the man home. There's no 911 to call, right? So, and again, fictional book. So the pastor and his wife take the man home to take care of him at their house, where he dies a few days later. He asked for one last request, which was to see his little girl before he died, and they made sure that happened. And his last words before he died were, thank you for taking care of me. I think this is what Jesus would have done. The next Sunday, in the book, Reverend Maxwell challenged the congregation, how many would commit for 1 year to do nothing without first asking, what would Jesus do? 50 people accepted the challenge, including the owner of a local newspaper, a railroad superintendent, teachers, and, again, back when it was a woman who had just inherited $1 million. That's a lot of money now, but that was really a lot of money back then. Now, they might not always be 100% sure, but they would pray and they would think and then come to an answer and simply obey by asking the question, what would Jesus do? The rest of the book is about the challenges that each of us or each of them faced when applying what would Jesus do to their lives. The results were something that can only be described as an old-fashioned word, which is revival. Now, what would happen if we took this seriously? If you started to apply what would Jesus do, whatever situation you're in, whatever decision you have to make. And I'm going to suggest, if we did, it would make some changes in our life. And one is, it would change the way we think. Because our thinking would be influenced by prayer, right? Jesus spent whole nights in prayer and fellowship with the Father. Prayer was a high priority, and it was never compromised. It would change how we think about people. One day, Jairus, who was an official of the synagogue, begged Jesus to come to his home because his daughter was dying. And on the way, Jesus met a woman who had had a hemorrhage for 12 years. And in spite of the pressure of getting to the sick girl, Jesus took the time to spend with the woman who had been bleeding for 12 years. Jesus had time for people. In fact, if you took a Bible, and I don't want you to do this, and you cut out all the places where Jesus interacted with people or were involved with people, you wouldn't have much left of any of the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Old people, young people, rich people, poor people, all got his time and attention. I believe it would. You would think about what you consume, and I don't mean what you eat so much. What you watch. Would Jesus watch this? What you read. Would Jesus read this? What you look at on your phone or computer. Would Jesus do this? I heard, this isn't from me, I heard another preacher say one time, he was kind of preaching on the same subject, and he said, every time you sit down to watch a movie or a TV show or, whatever, would you invite Jesus to watch this with you? I think it would change how we think. I think it also would change what we say. James 3:6 says, the tongue is also a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body and sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on by fire of hell. That's pretty strong language, isn't it? But it is true. What we say can either influence somebody towards or away from Jesus. Think about different conversations you have. How might they be affected if you ask yourself, would Jesus say this? Would he tell this joke? Would he curse? Would he slander? Would he gossip? There's also the positive side, right? Not just about what Jesus wouldn't say, but what would he say? Would he speak up about people who are being abused? Would he stand up for the lost and the hurting? Would he speak words of salvation and deliverance? Well, of course he would. So it's not just about what Jesus wouldn't say, but it's also about what he would say. I also think it would change what we value. There is nothing you have, ever will have, ever have had that's more valuable than your eternal soul. It's so valuable, it cost the life of the only begotten Son of God. We talk about salvation being a free gift for us, right? But it wasn't free to get it. There was a price paid for it. The price just wasn't paid by us. What would you trade for your eternal salvation? The Bible puts it this way: what would a man give in exchange for his own soul? Let me put it to you like this. I need to ask a question first. Does everybody in the room know who my wife is? If I asked you to point to her, could you do it? You know who she is? Okay. Is everybody aware how much I love her? Have you ever seen me do anything that is disrespectful or, okay. Now that that's clear, if she were to say to me, Don, now this is so outrageous it's hard to even say it or think about it, but Don, I'm done following Jesus, and if you don't come with me to walk away from him, then I don't want anything more to do with you. You know what I would say to her? I'll miss you. I mean, she got up at 5 o'clock in the morning yesterday to make cinnamon bun scones in honor of the coronation of King Charles. Whose wife did that? And that's not something out of the ordinary, okay? She has kind of asked me to not post pictures of, she doesn't know this till right now, but I put a picture of the scones on Facebook yesterday with one of your fancy teacups. Can I still come home for lunch? Yes, okay, thank you. I would not trade my eternal soul, my salvation, my following Jesus for my sweet Mary, and you know how much I love her. I am confident that if that example was turned around, she would say the same thing. That's how much we both value what Jesus did for us above everything and everyone. Peter wrote this, "To this you were called because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps." Follow in his steps. Follow in his steps. What would Jesus do? Now, I've been fighting the devil for a long time. And one of his best weapons against me is discouragement. Discouragement. And by that I mean, when you make a decision, what would Jesus do, and you're trying to do that, and then you mess up. Well, Don, you might as well give up. I told you couldn't do it. Jesus doesn't love you now. You made a commitment, and you're not following through, so, I just... Discouragement. Well, Don, I know you worked hard on that sermon. I know you prayed. I know you got up front. You gave it your best shot, but you know what? Fail. Whatever. Discouragement. So if you make the commitment to say, I'm going to live my life, what would Jesus do? You have to be okay with the fact that you are not going to be perfect. Unless someone in here is perfect, would you please raise your hand? Okay. You're not going to be perfect. But it's about the direction, right? It's about the direction. The more good decisions I make, the more right decisions I make, the more good and right decisions I will make. I've often used the example of faith is like a muscle, right? The more it's exercised, the stronger it becomes. If you don't do it, it atrophies, right? And you become weak. All right, let's pray. Lord, please show us what Jesus would do if he were in our situation at work, our situation at home, our situation in our neighborhood, our situation with our paycheck, our situation with our time, our situation with our entertainment, the way we treat our parents, the way we treat our children, the way we treat our spouses. We have multiple opportunities every single day to do our best as you help us, to do, to talk, to think, like Jesus. Help us to do it. Jesus to help me do what he would do. Ask Jesus to help me think like him. Ask Jesus to help me talk like him. Ask Jesus to help me value what he values. And come back next Sunday at 10 o'clock, either on site or online, to learn more about following Jesus. I'm going to switch up Pastor John's final words just a little bit. Although I am going to tell you, please remember Jesus loves you. Jesus likes you. Jesus wants you. And he wants to hang out with you, so let him do it, so you can find out what he would do, and then do it. God bless. See you next week.